Ja.
Welcome everybody, thank you for being here. I'm going to shortly introduce Joyce Overheul, which is really a pleasure for me to do. Joyce, I have one of her works at home. When you go, through the front door and then to the room, like our living room, just above the door. There is the small embroidery, yeah. I forgot it again, the title, this is, oh yeah, my own. So is Tino, like in English, that's just the way he is. Joyce is a politically, socially engaged artist, using a variety of materials, and in general she just whispered to me, and I think that's a good one, is really confronting us with harsh reality, like politically harsh reality, using soft materials. And the soft materials is of course because some of the materials that she uses, like embroidery specifically, is of course considered to be typically female material, or typically female, what? Hobby even, or, anyway. So, I'm giving the floor to Joyce, and after her talk, we will have a Q&A. Oh yeah, and Joyce had an operation, so during the inhale, something, no? She's good, she had an operation.
Thank you, Ina, for the wonderful introduction. So yeah, as you can see, I'm a bit slow today. And also my leg is the reason why I'll be sitting down. Today I want to walk you through the kind of art that I make and the current project that's on view at IMPAKT, and basically also talk about how I run my artistic practice. And because in short, that's what my work is about. This title, Live, Laugh, Leitmotif. You might recognize it from those ugly signs at Xenos saying live, laugh, love. I love like ugly public decor. And also basically Leitmotif, the way I work. The thing that my work is about, or the subjects, and I combined that all together in this title. It's also the title of my current exhibition at Centraal Museum, my solo show that is still on view until the 17th of November. So if you haven't been there yet, please go have a look. So let me introduce myself a bit more. I'm 34 years old. I studied fine art and a Master of Artistic Research at HKU here in Utrecht. And I grew up in a religious conservative environment where it was not a given fact that people were treated equally to each other. I mean, if you had a different color of your skin, if you were a woman or gay, you would, have a rough time, even in these days. And because of, I always question, but why is that? That's weird. Like, why is one person worth more than the other? And because of my sense of righteousness and basically questioning my surroundings, I started implementing these things I encountered myself in my works of art. And I use a lot of techniques and materials that were once deemed to be just women's hobbies. They were inferior to, the art of painting or sculpture. But I also find that weird because historically seen, traditional crafts have been used a lot. When telling stories, like during medieval times, you would look a lot at tapestries, for instance. And also I'm from a family of craftspeople. My grandfather was a shoemaker. Both my grandmothers were incredibly good at making needlework and sewing and embroidery. So it feels for me like working with textiles nowadays It's like, I think it's sometimes doing something. Okay, good. And because of that, it feels like continuing a family tradition a bit, but working with textiles. Also, I just like it a lot, you know, to do that. And as you can see, also in the thanks. As you can see, also in the previous works, there's a lot of biblical references in my works. They also appear to be a bit Catholic, although I'm from a Protestant background. And a lot of these techniques I actually taught myself, like this bead weaving snake you can see here. It's the snake from the biblical paradise that seduced Eve to eat from the forbidden apple. And I actually made this snake during a lockdown because I had enough time on my hands to learn myself a new technique. And I didn't have to go anywhere. Everything was cancelled. So I just had plenty of time to make this life-size snake. And this is, of course, linked to the biblical apple that still chains women to this day to a lot of sexist behavior we have to deal with. Because Eve ate from the apple in paradise, Adam and Eve were kicked out by God. And Eve was seduced by the snake, the devil, basically, to eat from this apple. But instead of blaming the devil, humanity blamed Eve, the woman, for seducing Adam to also eat from the apple. And instead of saying, well, she was seduced herself, it's your fault. And I think that's a very interesting narrative, and it's very telling of how we treat women today. Humour is also, because the last couple works were a bit more on the serious side, thematically, although they did look colourful. But other than that, humour is also an important part of my work as well. You see a couple of bums over here, and it might seem very random at first, but this is actually a continuation of a work I made when I was in art school. I was in the second year of my BA Fine Art at HKU, and we had to make a funny picture that had like multiple meanings, and so I figured to, convince my boyfriend it would be fun to make a picture of his ass, but then with a tiny paper umbrella in the middle, because it's like, dunes and the beach and a sun umbrella and the bum. And after like a fight of 2 hours, he agreed. And you have to be stubborn sometimes. So I hung that picture on my workspace, and one of the teachers dropped by and said, like, "Oh, Joyce, nice ass." And I was like, "Thanks, that's my boyfriend's." And he was like, "Oh, I thought it was yours." I was like, "No." And he was like, "Oh, but I'm not gay." And I was like, "I know that. But then can't I say it's a nice ass?" I was like, "Sure, of course you can. Why not?" So this really weird conversation happened. And also this was in 2009, I believe, 2010, around that time. So, nowadays teachers can't tell their students that they have a nice ass. Back in the old days, it was also a bit sketchy, but still it happened. But I didn't take offense because it was not my ass. And but I did notice that, his discomfort of realizing it was a man's bum he was complimenting that made him incredibly uncomfortable was really interesting to me. And then unfortunately, because you're a student, I made the picture with a really crappy digital camera. I lost the original. I do have like one thumbnail saved, but it's so small you can not even print it on a post stamp size anymore. So then in 2018 I decided to do a reboot of this project. And I went to look for more bums, more glitter and more decoration, because I was like, why can't men just compliment other men? What is this fragile masculinity that's going on over here? Because women can compliment other women all the time, and we're not being looked after at, like weird after that. So being looked at weird. Oh, come on. So here you are. This is a selection of the photos. And back at the time when I presented these series, I was still looking for more bums of color. But I'm happy to announce I have found a lot of bums of color. So, because I wanted, you know, the spectrum of skin colors to be as complete as possible, I also had some sexist rules because I figured, I mean, this is a project about sexism, so I have to be sexist myself as well. I only allowed, you know, butts that were in shape to model for the project. They were not allowed to be too hairy because otherwise the glitter wouldn't stay in place and it will not look nice. And I would have to put baby oil on them. And now, considering the lawsuit of P. Diddy, that's a bit weird, but I didn't know that back then. I did use a brush though, not my hands. And basically I turned it also into a set of postcards. And when I did that, I handed over the first edition of that set of postcards to my old teacher at HKU. And I handed it to him upside down and was like, I'm not gonna name his name, but person, I've got something for you. It was like, oh, thanks. And then he turned it around, was like, oh no, this again. So yeah, it might seem a bit frivolous, but it's actually a lot of fun. One guy even shaved his bum because otherwise he was not allowed to model. And if you look closely, it's the second row from the left, little blue umbrella, and you see like a panty of hair, like pantyhoses of hair, because all of a sudden then the hair, yeah. And then I was like, oh, I like this aspect of humor and a bit like an absurd vision about it. And well, something that I started this project 2 years after the first bum picture, and it's actually on view at the IMPAKT exhibition, The Cake is a Lie, at this moment. During my education, I once had the flu, and I was like, oh God, you know, feeling like dramatic. Is there not a simple solution for this? Because humanity has been terrorized by flu for so many years, and I'm like done with it. I've got stuff to do. Is there just not one pill that would solve all your problems? And I was like, oh, what if I just ask random people online to send me one picture of their daily medication, see what this end up in, and maybe I can make like a pill that, you know, contains all these ingredients, so it might cover as many illnesses, diseases as possible. So I placed a bunch of advertisements online on platforms like Hives. I mean, yeah, it's an old project. Facebook, message boards, and also some bloggers picked it up. Basically just asking people for one pill of their daily medication. Just send it to me. Like, I need just one. I just need a little bit of active ingredients. And here you can see some of the responses I got. And there are actually, you know, people listing all these types of medication they have. Like on the top right, you can see microgynon, paroxetine, zopicon, oxazepam, diclofenac, artorec, valerian, just something herbal, and the list just goes on and on and on. And in the end, more than 60 people sent me their medication, varying from just paracetamol to morphine, other heavy painkillers, antipsychotics, anything. And it just came in all little cute envelopes. I got a lot of mail. People included notes as well, wishing me all the best with the project, and also explaining what this medication did for them. And just one person, by the way, questioned my true intentions. And she was like, aren't you just going to kill yourself with all this stuff? And it's like, I mean, obviously not. So I was like, no, I'm not. And also I can, you know, even if you don't send in anything, it doesn't matter, because if I wanted to, I already have enough pills. So yeah, you do you can send something in, you don't have to. And then she sent me a box of Prozac. So then came the time to create all kinds of tests, because I had this bunch of medication. I could just not, you know, try something, because I needed to keep it intact as much as possible to waste as less product as possible. And in the end, I just made a clay pill, then copied it using a latex mold, and basically made a paste out of the existing medication. which you can see here. The inside actually looks like that. The white coating is just there. So it looks more like a pill. It has a little line on the middle, so you can break it in halves easily. And there you have it, the finished product. And the funny thing is, I mean, the slogan of the project is the answer to all your problems. But if you eat this pill, you're actually gonna die because of all its contents, and then all your problems will be solved. This got me a bit into trouble at art school, little bit. Because the teachers were like, is she not going to do something really stupid with this bunch of medication? So one of the teachers reported me to the head of the faculty, and he came by and was like, are you going to do something stupid? I was like, no. Good. And that was it. But later on, yeah, it can be very easy, you know. How to solve problems, just ask questions. And I wanted to exhibit this project in Sweden right after my graduation, but Sweden is not part of the EU in the way that you can just cross the border and take anything with you if you want to. There are border checks, at least back then. And so I wanted to do this the official way, because I was going to travel with 2 friends, a dog and a van, and they were like very likely to check that van. And then, or if they would bring a sniffer dog, this contains opiates, so I would be screwed. And I was like, I don't want that, you know, just as after graduation. So I called customs, and they said, well, you can basically take everything across the border that you obtained legally, but it's not legal to donate your medication to someone else. Even though the other people did donate it to me and I didn't pressure them, still I wasn't allowed to like have some of these medications. And because there's also a leaflet written to accompany the pill, they were like, oh yeah, but it looks like, you know, you can eat it, right? And I was like, well, technically yes, but practically no, because it's this size. And but they're like, yeah, but it has like a little strip, so it's meant for consumption. I was like, if you put it like that. So I had to go to the NVWA, which is basically the authority for food and drink safety in the Netherlands. And they had to discuss it internally to see if it was actually a food. But then also, because I made this patient information leaflet, they were like, no, it's medication. And if you look at the bottom, it has a registration address. And I was like, yeah, I just put up that address. It's mine over there. I made it up. Yeah, but it's still registered. I was like, no, I just made that up. So then I had to talk to the Association of Dutch Doctors and Pharmacists, the NVAA. And they were actually discussing if I was allowed to keep the pill. And luckily I was. I'm just not allowed ever to take it across country borders, because then, you know, they would cause me some trouble. But then I figured I would just make a placebo for the exhibition. Yeah. So I showed a fake pill in Sweden. Yeah. So here we have the patient information leaflet. And it summarizes all active ingredients, effects and side effects. And here's a short overview of the side effects. It has more than 140 active ingredients, more than 200 effects and more than 900 side effects. It's like all leaflets combined into one. And basically, if you get all this stuff at the same time, it's not going to end well, right? And just with any medication, I also created an advertisement poster to advertise this pill. First, I also had like the leaflet as a written text on my website, but I took that down because a lot of people were Googling their symptoms and then ending up on my art project website and emailing me, like, what's that? I was like, oh, this is not going to work, because the majority of my views were like people Googling why they had a headache and what they could do about that, instead of people being interested in the arts. And I like it, but I mean, you must have guessed it, but the name is a play on words on Dr. Phil. And just like Dr. Phil, this pill actually doesn't solve anything. I may also made a small video documentary. You can actually watch it at the exhibition, so I'm not going to show you now. But in the documentary, there's one clip of Len, a girl from Den Bosch. She has anorexia, and she sent in more than 20 diet pills. And I went to her house to see, like, why did you contribute to this project, and why did you keep all this medication? Because, I mean, 20 pills, it's a lot. And then it turned out, in here she's showing off all those boxes and bottles that she kept. And she actually kept them on the bottom of her living room floor next to her kids' toys. So, and I was like, but so basically he can just, access those pills and eat them with all possible effects. So I really invite you to come over to the IMPAKT venue to look at this work further. Like I said before, here you can also see the Live Laugh Leitmotif title again. I currently have a show going on at Centraal Museum. And you can see a lot of the works that are made during the most recent years, like this Pietà, with the imagery of the biblical paradise and Eve holding Adam and the snake lurking from a tree. And what is really nice, well, if you ask me, of course, about this exhibition is that you can also look at a lot of the works from the back, because it's a lot of handicraft, it's a lot of, very petite techniques that you normally can't see in full detail, but now you can, because we kept all glass walls completely open. Most artists blocked them up with stickers or fabrics. And in this way, these works have nothing to hide, and you can experience them from all sides. And what is also nice is that the works really interact with each other, because you can see certain parts through certain walls or not. And you can also see a video of me where I explain more about some of the interesting parts I found while working on some of the works. Here's another view. Oh, it's showing up really well, actually. Here you can see a lot of stitches of embroidery work, but seen from the back. And then you get a sense of view of how much time it takes to make every work. And how much dedication, basically, because I'm going to show you the front of the work as well. But most projects just take hours and hours to complete, weeks. And this is also the reason why within my work, I focus a bit more on tendencies in general and not specific incidents. Because if I would do that, the incident has gone, by for weeks before I've finished the work. And it's a challenge already to make political art in a political climate that's changing constantly with a technique that's incredibly slow. So it always feels like a race against time. And one of my personal favorite things, by the way, about this exhibition is that you can touch stuff. Because normally I'm going to chop your hands off if you do. And there's actually this pile of test pieces, and on top of it, the glass plate, you can touch things. Because normally it's like the avocado people from the supermarket who squeeze every avocado and ruining them for the rest of the crowd. It happens a lot with my beadworks, especially, and velvet works. These are some of the beadworks of this series are also on view. The one in dark blue black, Zo is hij nou eenmaal, that's the one Ine was talking about earlier. And I made this series with sexist quotes, but they're styled as tiny beadworks, old-fashioned embroidery pieces from past times. And this is also because I believe some of these quotes should be of past times. It was just a joke. Don't look so angry. That's just the way he is. You must have asked for it yourself. Or you can't say anything anymore these days. And I think, most women during their lives have heard at least one of these. Can we see some hands from some, if you have heard one of these quotes before? I'm going to show more. Yeah, I have more.
Yeah. I mean, it's a lot of people. And they're horrible. Yeah. And they're horrible to say, but still others keep saying them. So I think they should be relics of the past, just like this embroidery style. So that's why I combined them. Also, I wanted to ridiculize these quotes a bit by making them look as innocent as possible. And like, don't look so angry. And don't cry about it. Each of these works, by the way, take about 70 hours to complete. Like every bead is sewn on one by one. This is, are you on your period or what? And you're pretty technical for a woman. And like the smaller ones, like these are a bit like on the smaller side. They each contain about 8,000 beads. And the big ones are around 13 to 15,000 beads. And it's also like perfect lockdown things to do. I had it sounds terrible, but I actually had a fun time, just sitting at my desk and bead weaving. So I made 12 of these, and then I found out, I think it's very important to, that my work is accessible for the bigger public. But the problem with these was that, they're expensive to make. It costs a couple hundred of euros for each, because it's very high quality material. It takes forever to make one. And then you just have one. And I didn't want to make a lot of editions of it, because then I'll be bead weaving for the entire year. And that's a bit too much, even for me. And I figured, and also price-wise, if you want to buy them, for most people, they're not affordable. And I really realized that as well. So then for some reason, a lot of people said about these physical beadbooks, oh, I'd love to hang one on my toilet. And I was like, why? But I mean, you do you. And then I figured, what do you hang on your toilet? So I designed a birthday calendar. So each month you can look at a different artwork and a different sexist quote. Of course, my birthday is also on there. And I thought it's really nice to just make this an affordable way for people to enjoy the beadworks at home, and also to spread the word about my art as well. And I also made it a little bit educational, because on the calendar you can also find other women who did something notable or something important. So each month you see those birthdays of those other women. And on the back, when you're sitting on the toilet anyway, you can read about them as well. So another work, this one unfortunately is not on view at Centraal Museum, but it will be on view at the grand opening of Galerie Larik at Oudegracht on the 16th of November, so be there. And I also crochet. I also crochet for a living, haken in Dutch, if some people might not know the translation. I design crochet patterns as a side hustle. And I like the combination of making really innocent toys or play items with harsh reality. And I like that contrast of the contents of a project and the way it looks or the way it is made. And in 2021, when the war in Ukraine broke loose for the second time already, I saw a lot of little kids making Molotov cocktails on the streets. They were 4 years old. And they were holding beer bottles and rags and putting together all those Molotov cocktails. And I was like, they should be playing with toys or stuffed animals, not with bombs to be. So then I decided to crochet Molotov cocktails and style them like they could be from an interior design magazine. They even have some glitter on the flames. And you can throw them at something and they will not do any harm at all. And most of the times people just think they're nice decorative bottles before realizing that they're actually Molotov cocktails. So I also like to make Trump portraits as a hobby. My women's hobby. And I'm really curiously awaiting the 5th of November. And especially the day after, I'm just going to sit at the TV continuously. First, I made 4 portraits of Trump. in a pop art style. And I just used media photo. During this period, he was complaining about Hillary Clinton and that she would cry a lot and whine a lot. But all I had to do to create this image is to add some sweat and tears. And I think it's really funny how, this man, he always accuses other people of creating fake news, but I barely had to edit this to get this result. Another portrait I made is this one. It's an edited mugshot when Trump was taken into jail for like a night, not even during the night, just an evening, and had this jail photo taken. So I made his skin green and added some flames of hell, because I personally hope that that's going to happen, that the guy's going to end up in jail and that he's not going to win the election. That will make my day or my week, at least. And because also you might wonder, like, why do you care about this guy so much? But he has a lot of influence on Western countries as well, on women's rights over here, on your rights over here. And a lot of political parties are actually adapting the things he is saying, and also to the law we have over here, like abortion rights in the US. It's like really terrible what has happened over there. But also in the Netherlands, abortion has not been decriminalized. So the same could potentially happen over here. Just realize that next time you're going to vote. And that brings me also to the next work. Het ergste moet nog komen. The worst yet has to come. It's a quote by Schopenhauer, who was not a nice guy, by the way, but I just really like the quote. And I made this quote in the font Fraktur. You might recognize it. It's the font that the Nazis used during the war, or at least the beginning of the war, for their propaganda, because it looked like folk. Because up to the 1920s, I believe, this font was widely used in a large part of Europe, not just Germany. But people quit using it because it was not that easy to read, especially when you had to print newspapers on like tiny fonts, or using tiny fonts. So I turned this quote into something like kind of kitsch, but still like a bit like unheimlich. Well, what is it? It's not like you get this feeling something bad is going to happen. And I made this work as a response to the upcoming far-right and fascist parties of the Netherlands. This was 2.5 years ago. And people are like, oh, it's not going to be this bad. But now we have a Dutch cabinet with actual fascists in there. So unfortunately, this work is still not out of fashion. Here you can see the tiny beads I've used and the tiny threads. And because I wanted it to look really delicate, that it's actually quite fragile. Normally, like my works are very asshole proof or hufter proof, as we would say in Dutch, because people are often touching them. But this one is actually really fragile, because I hope that, one day this will all crumble down and we don't need this work and its context anymore. And so another quite serious work, but which looks a bit lighter at first glance, is this one. Short title is Ter Apel. And as you can see, it's an image. It's a news photo from ANP. And it's a refugee camp. And at first sight, you go like, oh, that looks like Greece or Calais, Turkey, maybe. But no, this is in the Netherlands. This is Ter Apel. And the date this news photo was taken was the 22nd of September, 2022. So it's really recent, and the situation over there has not changed much. So I saw that picture on the IMPAKT website, and I was like, I want to do something about it, but what material am I going to use? I want to use a material or technique that makes it look really personal. I want to make the people like kind of anonymous, that they're not very, well, they're recognizable as people, but no, you can't use like a face scanner app on it. It will not recognize them. So I decided to use buttons and embroider the entire tapestry out of buttons. It took me 13 months to complete. I'm just going to go back to this picture for now. The size of the thing, it's 2.5 meters tall and 3 meters and 85 centimeters wide. It's made out of 3 panels, because otherwise there's no way of reaching the middle part when you're, working on it from the sides. And the reason why I chose buttons is because, we all have a button, at least one, on our clothing at this moment. But we don't really pay attention to it, although they keep our stuff together, literally. They keep our clothes together. And at the same time, they tell us a lot about who we are, our style, the period we live in. Over here you can see some kids' buttons as well. You can see like military style buttons that were used on like old-fashioned bed sheets. Like I personally really like the tiny yellow owl. And there's also a button a bit on the left, on the center of the left, that's shaped like a horse's head. It's made out of copper. And I think what is important in like situations like this, where a lot of people are like in a dire situation and don't have a lot of perspective on life, is to not forget that they're human, just like you and I. And I think buttons are a really nice way to show that we're all similar, but still we're different. And what I also liked in this project, because I've been sorting buttons for months and collecting them as well, that you find a lot of people's stories through all the stuff that you're gathering. I found buttons that were used during the Second World War, actually buttons made out of coins with the face of one of the former queens, Wilhelmina, on it. And the coins were turned into buttons, so people could wear that on their clothes as like a subtle sign of resistance against the German occupation. I also found Nazi uniform buttons. That was quite a shock. They're not in there. I kept them apart. And I think it's and also like a lot of very similar green buttons, like dark green, as you can see on the bottom, a bit right from the center over there. And I was like, that's really strange, because so many people are sending in buttons, but almost all batches have a couple of these buttons that are exactly the same. And then it turned out to be buttons of military uniforms when young men had to do military service. And I was like, oh, right, we had to do that. Shortly after I finished the work, just before I finished the big work, the Dutch cabinet, previous cabinet, fell, and Mark Rutte left the Dutch chamber for the last time as prime minister. And this photo was taken, it's also an IMPAKT photo. And I decided to also turn it into buttons, because I thought it's a very interesting addition to the first work. And like to show this human touch to a person who has been treating society like a lot of things except for the humans that we are. And also that a person that is not looking to improve, or like the things he could have done in the past to improve the situation for most of us at least, let alone all of us. Currently, I'm continuing these button series by making war flags. And here you see the Ukrainian flag and the Syrian flag. And I think it's like the contrast of they're not ripped apart. The fabric just isn't completed. But then also like the details of the personal items. And I think I really want to use this as like a personal touch to remind people of the humans we are. And yeah, that's it. I'm still sorting buttons, by the way, because it's one of the few things I can do with my foot right now. So here's the Palestinian flag. So if you want to contribute to this project and you have some buttons, hit me up. More than 130 people already have done. And I think it's heartwarming that so many people still care and, want to make a contribution. And that basically also turns these works into a kind of, collective art pieces, which I really like, because I think that together we can improve our society and the places we live. So yeah, that was my presentation. I hope you have questions. Thank you. And you can follow all my adventures over there. Yeah. I don't know what's going to happen. Ine, you're going to ask me questions, right? Yeah.
You want to sit there or you want to sit
We can go there. Yeah.
there? Okay.
Will take me a bit, but let me just put on like a nice slide. Any preferences from someone from the audience?
Slide.
Yeah.
Just some nice embroidery.
Oh, yeah. Let me do that one then. Oh, it's on.
Yeah, okay.
Yeah.
So there we are. So I have some questions, but of course, it's a Q&A. It's perhaps much more fun and illuminating if you ask the questions immediately, and I suppose because it's like very straightforward what Joyce's work is about, you might have some questions.
Tough ones would be nice.
She likes tough one. And otherwise I will...
Yeah.
Yeah, there.
It's not a tough question, perhaps a little bit a soft question. I thought, is it true that parts of your works are also community art projects in the sense that people help you with embroidering or like putting the buttons on?
Yeah, partially. I don't think they're like full community art in that sense because I still like get the main say in what it's gonna look like, and like I make all the big decisions, but they can help and join in. Still, you will see it's like a handwriting when someone else like sews together pieces of fabric or buttons onto fabric, but like I will decide like the exact placement of the most important, like 90% of all the pieces. I wouldn't say it's like the classic community art. I do like to, work together with other people on textile art in general. Also, otherwise I can't finish it in time. I think with the big Ter Apel piece, I worked with 3 full-time interns and a part-time assistant just to get it finished. It took 13 months. So imagine if I had to do that all on my own. It would not have been finished by today. But I think one of the tough things of like the classic community art projects is that, I mean, of course, everyone wants their say, but then it can get really complicated with political art because everyone has different political views. Then they still, need to make a contribution. So it's like a 50-50 version.
So it's more co-creatorship in the form of painting by numbers.
Yeah. Basically, like literally, the button tapestries are literally made like painting by numbers. It's a funny thing that you say that because I make a big drawing based on the news photos. And then I transfer that drawing onto the fabric with water-soluble embroidery film. And basically just place like the gray buttons in that corner and the black ones over there. And that's how you make it, yeah. It's literally painting by numbers.
It's also, of course, like how artist studios always have been working.
Yeah.
So, a sense of, yeah.
And also I see my work not necessarily as something that has to be made by me, but as something someone else could make these as well. But I just happen to, make this work at this time. And I also think it's important to be open and honest about that. Also at the museum, you can find a list of all the people who donated materials or their time or contributed in any other way. Also to honor them and their efforts when after making this art project.
There is another side to it, though. I remember, I think it was on a studio visit that you were explaining. Is my
Yeah?
Yeah, okay. You what? You were
Don't for the
explaining
tip.
that the working with embroidery or like is of course also slowing down the process,
Yeah.
which gives you time to
think
Yes.
and watch documentary. I like that it's in a way I don't like. I always find art forms where you have to make very definitive last minute decisions that you can't undo or redo really challenging and a bit stressful, honestly. So like I'm not a painter. I'm not. And I think it's nice to have a lot of time to think through all the steps you have to take because it's a lengthy process. And also you have a lot of time to explore the subject. There's a lot of time for documentaries, podcasts. If it's like with video, I have to watch it twice because otherwise I can't just look at the screen all the time or just at the handicraft all the time.
So it gives layers to your work as well. Yeah. That's actually
And if you want to change something along the way, there's still plenty of time to integrate that. So that's also something I really like about these techniques.
More questions? Yeah. Oh, sorry. Didn't see so much lights.
Yeah, well, like I brought my sunglasses actually.
Get a headache.
Okay.
Yeah.
Thank you for the talk. It was really interesting. I wanted to ask about your original influences, specifically like political influences when you first started making art, because I find that a lot of your earlier work reminds me of like the first phases of feminism, and especially because you were in art school at a time when like things were really turning in terms of feminism. And now we've kind of moved past that, like first, second, third wave feminism. And now I feel like your work has kind of broadened in that sense, that it's not limited to specifically women's rights. And so I wanted to know, like, how have your political influences changed over time? And have you ever been challenged in your political lens from like the very beginning towards now? Like I see you're including like Palestine, and whereas like before it's like these very traditional misogynistic things that we've heard in the past have been almost like rendered obsolete. I'm not going to say that no one hears those things anymore, but it's much more consequential to say those things in today's day and age versus before. And also as like a younger person, I feel like older women had to deal with a lot of that. And whereas now like things are much more intersectional and much more critical. So how have like your political influences changed over time since when you first started making art?
Ooh, I think the first time I came in like really in touch with politics was during high school. As I said, I'm from a conservative background. My family is not that conservative, but the background, like the environment is. And like also interesting note, like those terms you just said, like intersectionalism, it's not there on the countryside. Then it will take decades before they're at that point. So like the rendered out things, young women these days, they're still outside of the big cities of the Netherlands. It's not a progressive liberal country. They still really have to deal with that on a day-to-day basis.
Even in cities, though. So I think it's also, it's younger generation might.
Yeah. But I think especially if you go to the countryside, it's really bad, unfortunately, still. And my first engagement with politics was, let's first say I'm not anti-religion. I'm anti-religion influence on lawmakers and society. Because my high school, the director that was there he left, thankfully, after a year, tried to ban Christmas trees because there were hedonistic symbols. Yeah, pagan symbols. And he also tried to ban a guy who had a blue mohawk, and the guy just said, like, just show me the part of the Bible that says you can't have a blue mohawk. Yep. And so it was this, you're a teen, you're going through puberty, you're just fighting against the establishment. It was a very Christian establishment. And I was also very involved in like politicians getting elected, protesting against SGP. And the influence also those political parties had at my high school, because there were like kids petitioning against G-star jeans, because G-star used the thorns, which were the crown of Jesus when he was on the cross. So that's not allowed, and we should ban G-star. And so everyone who didn't like this, of course, started to wear G-star pants. And after that, I was also very interested in privacy and the way young people started to use the internet. And, you know, your parents always used to tell you, like, don't put your personal information on the internet. And now they do it themselves. And which I think is really interesting. But then I didn't really realize how much interest I had in feminism until like my 3rd year in art school, 4th year. Yeah, roughly, yeah. And also the upcoming of the Nasty Women exhibitions.
What?
Nasty Women exhibitions, like Trump. There was a... Upcoming. Yeah, so I started to realize it more, that my interests were there, and I think as an artist you grow and develop yourself, and or sometimes you have to find your way. And I think that it was like also a bit of a challenge to include my person, because I love doing crafts like knitting, crochet, embroidery. But on art school, they said, that's not art, that's a hobby. Joyce, why are you always carrying your knitting with you? You should make art, that stuff. And it took me a couple years before I could fully integrate the two with each other. And then I started to see patterns, like, oh, I work with women's hobbies. And I've experienced, at first I also did not realize myself fully the amount of sexism I experienced as a kid. And growing up in this conservative environment, that realization came later when I moved out of that environment, which was also a bit of a shocker of the realization how bad that environment actually was at the time. So I decided to do more with that. And sometimes I also think you just have to like literally physically distance yourself from a situation before you can have like a clear outlook on it. And I think that is what happened throughout the years. So, and I think that's like a change that you see in my works. I would love to, like, I still make works, like the bead works, but about women's rights and feminism, but they're also not like included here because I got 40 minutes and I tend to talk a lot. So then it's not gonna fit. But I wish, like sometimes I wish I could just clone myself, because then I could make more things, because everything just takes a long time. Yeah, so I hope that answers it a bit. Okay.
Yeah.
Oh, wow. I really can't see with the lights.
No, the light is...
Yeah, I was wondering, because, well, you're obviously making political art, and I was wondering, do you see yourself as an activist? And also because it takes a lot of time to make these things. Do you feel like politically it is worth the time you're getting into it? And also, like, do you feel like you have any influence on the political or social, I don't know, atmosphere? Do you feel like it's enough? Or do you also do things besides your art? Yeah.
I think it's never enough. At least I have that feeling that you can always do more or be at more places. And one of the downsides of that type of work is that it takes a lot of time. So I don't have a lot of time outside of that to like go to places or demonstration. I do have to admit, like I've got an autoimmune disease, so I avoided large demonstrations like hell because of COVID and stuff. It's not very serious. I'm not going to die of like just a cough, but it's like I have to keep that in mind. But also, so I think, yeah, of course, I could do more. I'd also realized that like I have most influence online, so I chose to focus on that a bit more. And Yeah, but it's always a bit of a struggle, like where you can only, spend your time and your money once. So what are you going to do this time, that time? And that sometimes I think, oh, yeah, I should have, done more or posted more about this subject online, but I was caught up in something else. Yeah, it's tough to find a balance sometimes, but I do see myself as an activist, but not like, yeah, it sounds a bit weird, just not the most active activists. Especially but last couple of weeks I've just been sleeping. This is actually my second working day since 6.5 weeks, which is really weird. And but especially then when you're stuck at home on crutches or in a wheelchair, you feel like, oh, I could have done so many things last couple of weeks. But I don't see myself as like the hardcore activist that gets chained up and taken in by the police because they did some stuff. It's more like online and through art. I do think nowadays I still would create these works if no one would look at it, because I feel this urge to make stuff, and I want them to not just be pretty, but to also have some value and some content to it, and not just you. Otherwise, I could just paint the Dom Tower or flowers or something. But I think that is just a bit boring. Maybe it's nice to do it once, but after that, why make another one? And I think with political art, because it's an ever-changing world, it's also my way of dealing with situations and kind of documenting them and things, document the things that happen right now or have happened in the past. So I think nowadays I have a bit more influence, especially when stuff happens. And a couple years ago, I got my first solo show at Museum de Fundatie in Zwolle. And unfortunately, 2 months after it opened, the director got kicked out because of misbehavior and because of yelling and shouting at employees. And people were like, Joyce, what do you think of that? And I was like, well, awful. I didn't notice a thing, by the way. It was really strange because it happened everyone kept all the stuff that was happening completely hidden from me. So I read it in the newspaper, and it was really strange that they were like, what are you going to do? But are you going to take off all your works from that wall? And then I was really like, I lost my cue. Crap, I lost my story.
And it was activism. Of course, there are so many levels.
Yeah, there are so many levels. And I was like, but what am I supposed to do about this? Because I can't help it and I can't solve it. And it was a really weird time for me as well. And I lost it. Sorry. It's still a bit. Yeah.
Related to activism and the many layers. Yesterday we had Kubra Academy. We had a performance. I don't know whether you saw the performance. No. Because
I was sleeping. Sorry.
Yeah, sleeping. Yeah, get it. And we have more female artists, more on the activist side, actually. So Kubra Academy is one. Suzanne Khalil Youssef is another one, in the exhibition, The Cake is Alive, but also here, performative work, etc. And I think it's so interesting because yesterday, it was really impressive. This performance by Kubra, she comes from Afghanistan. Her work that we show in The Cake is Alive, next to drawings, is a documentation of a performance she did in the streets of Kabul, like the high street, Hoofdstraat, the high street of Kabul, where she walked alone as a woman wearing an armor harness. And it was awful what happened to her. It's all documented, and of course we know it was life-threatening, and she needed to flee the country. But yesterday, this performance was really showed the whole the context, and how bad the situation is for women in Afghanistan. Of course, lives of women just don't matter. It's But what I want to say, it's also related to what you're saying. It's I think we should be not too lazy. I'm not referring to you specifically, but in general, thinking that well, we've had it now after the third wave of feminism, etc. I think there's still lots to do. There's like, it's not a patriarchy that we see in Afghanistan, but it's still inscribed in the lives and behavior of men and women and all in between, non-binary, etc. And so, and also what Joyce is saying, you know, like the differences between cities and the countryside, but also, you know, the bubbles we live in, or like, you know, like how we, you know, we have our own circles, and yeah, there everybody uses the right pronouns or uses the right etiquette, even, you know, how to deal with it, how to relate with each other. But still, now why I say this, and sorry, I remember that I was working. How old are you now?
34, almost 35.
At the Jan van Eyck Academy, and I was making this big symposium. Making this big symposium, and there was a reaction from the crowd. But yeah, the feminism, we had that. No, that was like 30 years ago. You know, so we have to be careful about that, because I think, and of course, with now right-wing governments, with the PVV, etc., coming up, Trump, possibly even like within the election. This is going to be our, like, voorland again? Like, what's voorland? Like this might be, again, our future, so it might be turning the other way even, so we need to be alert, I think, all of us. Sorry for... You go ahead.
React for a second. Yeah, I just wanted to clear up, like, I don't underscribe the... I feel like you're putting up a binary, like being activist, like, oh, they're going on the streets and that kind of stuff. And also what Joyce just said about resting and not really being on the streets. And I really don't want, like, to make that binary, because I think these kind of things are evenly so activist. And I think in late stage capitalism, rest is also resistance. So I think it's like... I don't want to make the assumption, and I don't really agree with what you just said about, like, the activist artists, and I don't know. I feel like you're just as activist, or can be, if you want that.
I mean,
it's
so, a great field. I like
that's
colorful, very colorful fields.
By the way, I have a nice fun fact about resting. Just to add on what you say, laziness is a Christian concept.
Yep.
We made up laziness. We make people feel bad for being lazy, so they start working for us, capitalism, or the owners of enslaved people. So that was like an eye-opener to me, because I'm from a very Calvinistic background, so you have to work all the time and be efficient and have like a sky-high productivity. And then no one is lazy over there, because it's like a sin. But we came up with that ourselves, I only recently found out about that. Luckily in time, because I was as lazy as I could be, like last month, or 6 weeks already.
There we have your artistic resistance, for sure.
Yeah. Just do the opposite of what they expect. And it's still, like, it's so wired into our brains that we always, like, I also suffer from that we always have to do more, or could have done more. But it's good to take a stance. I also notice it, like, I noticed everyone of this adventure gonna happen, like, way beforehand. But still, there are people, like, 2-3 days after I had a big surgery, and 2 or 3 days after my surgery, just came home from the hospital, just was sleeping and drooling on the sofa. That was it. And people were like, "Can we meet next week in your studio?" I was like, "No." But then also, like, the error in their brains that just, yeah. So I think, I had to think of that. You know, laziness is Christian concept. Yeah.
Ramon, last question? I don't know.
Thank
you. More? Time, I don't have time. What's 4 minutes?
Okay, quick.
No. Go.
Okay,
I'll be here anyway afterwards.
fair enough. Yeah, in the attic, yes.
It will take me 15 minutes to get to the front door.
Yeah, oh my God. Well, glad you're here. I want to start by saying that I really, really like the button works. I think they really like put an emphasis on this element of like, okay, the flag is a symbol, but the people it represents is so multiple, like so many, and it has a very like contemplative effect as well, which is like its materiality, like you get that effect from the button itself. So I wanted to relate this to the notion of like, okay, museums, exhibitions, they're very site specific, and they usually attract a certain, let's say, bubble of audience, and I think it has an impact in that sense. But then do you ever feel frustrated about the fact that, okay, like in, for example, like the countryside that we mentioned, like when it doesn't reach where you would like ideally want it to reach? I don't know, I guess I just want to hear your opinions on this.
Yeah, I've experienced that, and I found out that actually my work, I experienced this most when I was doing my MA in artistic research. It was very highbrow. I'm not necessarily a highbrow person. I like TV shows like Temptation Island and like terrible podcasts. So I think it's important that my art can at least be understood by like multiple types of people, also outside of my bubble. And I also think that because I really put a lot of effort in my website. It's like an archive next to a blog. You can find anything about all the projects you want to know. And it's like in Dutch and English. So it's like as accessible as possible through the internet. I didn't use like too difficult language or too harsh language. So it's like understandable for people who didn't do an MA in artistic research as well. And I think like the museum crowd, it's like left-wing, educated, like stereotypical museum crowd. But then at the same time, like also with the calendar, I tried to think of ways to reach more people, even through toilets now in this case. Because, I mean, we, the Dutch, we put calendars on toilets. And don't know why, we just do. And I think it's like important that everyone, like even you can, I'm fine with like people just walking by and saying, like, oh, that looks really pretty, or I don't like the way it looks, and that's it. And you continue, that's fine by me. But I don't get offended if you don't want to dive into it. If you do want to dive into it, I'm here for you if you need more explanation. At the same time, I get like, well, not scolded at, but looked at by the highbrow, very left-wing artsy crowd for not being artsy enough, because the work is pretty. The colors are shiny and bright. I use gold and diamond glittery things. They don't like that. It's not like, I always compare it to some art spaces that only exhibit installations made out of a stick, a curtain and a ball. I'm not that type of artist, and I'm never gonna be. Which I think, I mean, it's fine. There are tons of different types of art, but that one's just not my thing. But I'm also not their type of artist, so it's like a bit of exclusion from both sides, which at the same time makes me a bit more embedded at the other side as well. And yeah, I think what we sometimes forget is that like, if we want to have like a true inclusivity, it has to be inclusive to everyone, not just highly educated people. Sometimes you see websites, I'm not going to name names, but there are some Utrecht art spaces who have really challenging fonts and moving letters on the. It's not IMPAKT. It's not IMPAKT.
Yeah.
No, it starts with like one of the first three, the third letter of the alphabet. You go think. And they have like moving fonts. So if you have like dyslexia, or you can't read properly because of any other reason. That's a challenge, but we don't think about that. And those people often get excluded. And I think it's like inclusion is important if you like also if people did not have the nice fancy education. I once was working in a gallery. Every time I have a gallery show, I try to see if I can do at least 1 or 2 days where I'm going to make a beadwork on site, and so people can see the amount of effort it takes, and they can ask questions about the techniques, because I think it's also important to keep the techniques alive. And one time, this woman from a really poor area of Rotterdam walked in because she saw online I was going to make beadwork. She recognized the brand of beads I was using, yeah, but she didn't look classy and rich. So the gallerist was like, who's that? Like, who? And yes, and it was really, really racist. And because this woman, black, poor, spoke with a Suriname accent, and she was all in those beads and wanted to know everything. We talked for like 2 hours about bead brands, but then the gallery was like, Joyce, what is she doing? She needs to get out. And I was like, why? Because why is she not allowed to be interested? Just because she's not going to buy anything? You know, most of the people who visit are not going to buy anything, so what does it matter? And so yeah, I try to be as aware as I can of exclusion and inclusion and that dynamic, and to not just look at your own bubble. This is also why basically everyone who wants to, from every education there is, can do an internship at my studio, and I will see like if I can cater to your studies, that you can learn something that's useful for you. The only thing I can't do is like some MBO studies, because they make it mandatory that you do the same task for 3 months, which I think is not humane, especially not with that.
Yeah.
So, and then it's like, and people go like, oh, you've got people from like some like, or Nimeto, or like studies like that in your studio. Why? It's like, why not? Because they want to learn. So if you want to, learn, you're more than welcome to do so. Why not? But I really recognize that part of, the bubbles, and every bubble, not trying to merge bubbles, but trying to, get the other one out of their sight. Yeah. Thank you.
I think we should round up. Is there any urgent question that still needs to be? Yeah, go ahead.
First and last question. It is a conscious decision that you don't. You've got your own arsenal of strategies to question like society, isn't it? It's like, I really like that your strategies don't polarize. You can say things that other more angry fueled activists can't say, and in that sense it's truly activism also, but completely a different arsenal of strategies.
Oh, thanks. I think nuance is key, personally. I once got like the what is it? It was not the comment that I was too nuanced, that you couldn't pick a fight with me. But I think that even if you don't agree with me, people still have the right to their own opinions, as painful as they might be to me. And I think like growing up in a place where I was a bit of an outcast, because my mom was not from the village. She spoke with a slightly different accent. So my sister and I were not fully integrated into the village as well. I mean, this is how small town villages are, unfortunately. So I was always used to like not be, completely integrated in the tiny society. So I think I've always had an eye for others who were not as well. And it doesn't cost anything. It doesn't hurt you to be kind, and at least try to understand someone's point of view. And then you can listen to them and like have a discussion about subjects. And I think especially the listening part is sometimes forgotten in society, because we get so angry so fast. And also in politics, I mean, it's a clown show these days. But if we just would start listening a bit more, then and calm down. Don't take. I have this talent for not taking everything very personal. Someone
And
called
the
me a
humor,
tefal
the humor.
pan recently.
Yeah.
Yeah, with like an anti-stick layer.
Healthy curiosity, I would say.
Yeah.
To other people, like.
Yeah, and I think we all have our own stories, and I'm always very interested. The brain fog is starting. I'm always very interested in people's stories and where they come from and what they've experienced, because you can only experience one life at the same time. So.
Good. Yeah, we end there.